part and place our power button and sensors into place. Our earpiece speaker is next, fitting snug back in its housing. Let's go ahead and maneuver our lower motherboard back into the phone. Let's be mindful of all our small components with our volume buttons on the side, our two cameras, set our connection plug down for our power button and sensors here at the top corner. Let's set a few securing screws to hold the board in place while we're continuing our rebuild. And when we're putting this one up here near our power button, let's make sure we put our bracket back into place as we're securing it down. We have our small ribbon cable on the side of our lower board with our locking socket. We can insert that cable into the socket and lock it down for connection. Another securing screw here on the other side of the motherboard should keep it in place while we continue the rest of our rebuild. Bring in the plastic protective cover and push it down firmly to secure it. Let's peel up the covers for our adhesive strips here down at the bottom of our phone. And then bring in our dock port here into the corner. Hold it in position as we place our loudspeaker over top of our dock port. And push down on the loudspeaker connection, securing it in its socket. Let's put the securing Phillips screws here for our dock port so that we can continue our reassembly without it falling out of place. Let's bring the battery back down into the center of the phone, maneuvering it around our ribbon cables. Let's now bring the upper portion of our motherboard into the phone. There's quite a few connections that we need to be mindful of as we're setting this down into place. Before we get started with our connections, let's go ahead and mount the motherboard, securing it with the 4 Phillips screws, one in each corner. Don't forget when we get down near the corner of the dock port that we position the bracket into place accordingly before securing it with its screw. While we're down in this area, we can go ahead and continue with our securing screws for our dock port as well as our loudspeaker. Here's our first of several connections. Let's first secure the connection down onto the board. And then bring in the 2 Phillips screws over top of it for security. Our connection here that also needs 2 Phillips screws to secure it. Let's now go around our phone and plug in the 4 coaxial connections that are necessary. Here's our first of many locking socket connections. This is for our display assembly. Slide the ribbon cable in and lock the socket down securely. This is an interconnection ribbon wire with a wafer plug on one end connecting the lower motherboard to a ribbon wire to a locking socket to our upper motherboard. On the other side, here's our second display assembly ribbon cable going into the socket and locking it down. And here's our final connection. Again, ribbon into the socket, flip the tab down to lock it securely. When bringing in the rear cover, let's be mindful of 2 things. Starting first with the side rocker buttons for the volume. Be sure they're mounted into place securely so they don't fall out of place when we're trying to mate it to the display assembly. And also when we are putting the 2 together, that we begin at the top portion of our HTC One, as these are not clips at the top, but they are more hooks. Once those hooks are snug in the top portion of the back of our case, we could begin to work ourselves down the side of the phone. Let's be mindful of that rocker button so that it doesn't fall out of place as we're snapping the phone back together.